Hello children. Well, it's nearly Christmas and I bet you're really excited and you have got all your presents wrapped and you're hoping Father Christmas will bring you lots of lovely presents. So I've got a story for you for Christmas, and this one is for people who are a little bit older because it's a longish story and it's one of my absolute favourites, and it's by an author called Hans Christian Andersen, who lived a very long time ago and wrote lots of fairy tales. And this one is called The Snow Queen. And the reason I've chosen this particular version is because it's a pop-up book. So I hope I can show you how wonderful the pop-ups are. You will know this story, and there are lots of stories based on it that you will probably know as well. But this is The Snow Queen. Let's start. I'll show you the pop-up in a minute. Once upon a time, in a faraway city, there lived two children called Kay and Gerda. They were not brother and sister, but they loved each other just as much as if they were. Their houses stood side by side, and they slept in attic bedrooms with windows so close they could reach out and touch hands. In summer, they shared a tiny roof garden where they planted vegetables in pots and a rose bush which climbed around the windows and framed them with flowers. In winter, they loved to curl up inside and listen to tales told by Gerda's grandmother. Grandmother often told the story of the Snow Queen. She flies in the thick of snowflake swarms, and when she peers through windows, they freeze in patterns like icy flowers. Gerda trembled when she heard this, but Kay said he was not afraid. One day, Kay and Gerda were playing outside when Kay cried, "Oh, my heart hurts, and there is something in my eye." Gerda could not see anything there, but she was so concerned that tears welled in her eyes. "Kay, what is the matter? Are you hurt?" Kay turned away from her. And here's their houses. Can you see the beautiful houses that they live in? Let's turn over. "Why are you crying?" asked Kay. "You look so ugly when you cry." Kay was unkind because his eye had been pierced by fragments from a mirror made long ago by a wicked goblin. When the mirror broke, the pieces spread over the world, and anyone with a shard of glass inside them saw ugly things wherever they looked. The piece of glass now rested in Kay's eye, and he could no longer feel kindness or love. "I'm tired of spending my time with a crybaby," he said, and he raced to the town square, leaving Gerda all alone. In the square, he tied his sled to a big sleigh so he could be pulled along. The driver shook the reins and the horses galloped off. Kay laughed as they left the city and sped through winter fields. What fun! The snow swirled and the sleigh raced on, leaping hedges and ditches. Finally, the horses stopped running and the driver stood up. She was a tall woman dressed in a fur coat made from fluffy snow. It was the Snow Queen herself. She saw that Kay was shaking with cold, so she wrapped him in her coat and kissed him. He felt the chill of her icy lips creep into his heart, and he gasped, but soon he was so numb that he didn't notice his freezing hands or feel even a little afraid. Together, Kay and the Snow Queen flew over forests and lakes. Around them the wind blew and the wolves howled. The moon made rivers of silver upon the ice as they travelled further and further north. Soon, Kay forgot about Gerda and grandmother, about summer warmth and climbing roses, and it seemed that the world had always been frozen and dark. And here's the Snow Queen. There we go. You can see that one. There's the Snow Queen on her sleigh. When Kay did not return, Gerda cried for days, but she refused to believe he was dead, So she put on her red shoes and she went to the river. "I'll give you my shoes if you bring little Kay back," she said to the water, and then she threw them in. The water pushed them ashore, for it did not have Kay, so Gerda climbed into a boat and set off to find him. "Perhaps the river will take me to him," she said, but instead it carried her to a beautiful garden. Here there lived an old enchantress who was kind but lonely. "I've often wished for a little girl like you," the woman said, and she combed Gerda's hair with a magic comb until all the memories of Kay were swept away. In the morning, Gerda ran out to the garden, but although she searched and searched, there were no roses. She sat and wept, for it seemed so important that she find one. Where her tears fell, a rose bush grew from the earth. "He isn't dead," the roses whispered. Suddenly Gerda remembered, "I must find Kay," and she ran up the road in her bare feet. She had not gone far when a black crow approached her. "Caw, caw, good day." When Gerda told her story, the crow nodded wisely. "Maybe I can help." A clever young stranger came by the palace one day, and because the princess was so very clever too, she decided to marry him. "Perhaps he is your king." The crow led Gerda to the palace and helped her sneak inside. There, in a red bed and a white bed, each shaped as a flower, were the royal couple. But the young man was not Kay. Gerda burst into tears. When the prince and princess heard her story, they gave her horses and a carriage of pure gold, so she could continue her search. And then they put fur boots on her feet and waved goodbye as the coachman drove her into the forest. And there's the flowers and Gerda going into the forest. Beautiful, isn't it? In the dark of the trees, Gerda's coat shone like the sun, and it caught the eyes of a band of robbers. "It's gold," they shouted, and they rode out of their hiding places, waving swords and firing pistols. They had soon surrounded the coach and taken Gerda prisoner. Amongst the band there was a little robber girl who was the same age as Gerda. "I want those fur boots," she said, and she took them off Gerda's feet. Then she said, "You have to come back to our robber's castle to be my friend." That night, as they lay in the robber girl's bed, in the hall amongst the animals, Gerda told the story of Kay and her long journey to find him. "Cool," said the doves in the eaves. "We have seen little Kay. He passed through here in the sled of the Snow Queen. She was taking him to her home in the north." "Oh, I would love to go back north," sighed a reindeer who was nearby. "I miss the gleam of the northern lights and the lovely snow and ice." In the morning, the robber girl dressed Gerda in warm clothes and tied her onto the reindeer's back. "Since you know where the Snow Queen lives, you take her there," she said to the animal, "but carry her safely, or I shall growl fiercely when you return." And this one is Gerda's gold coach in the forest. The reindeer and Gerda rode north towards the flickering aurora. "These are my gleaming northern lights," said the reindeer, and he greeted them like an old friend and ran even faster. After many long miles, they came to the house of a wise woman. Inside it was so hot that Gerda took off her boots and gloves. "I know," said the reindeer to the woman, "that you are very powerful. You can tie the wind in knots. Can you help Gerda find Kay?" The woman shook her head. "Child, you must journey alone to the Snow Queen's palace. I can offer you no help, for all you need to save your friend is the love that lies in your heart. Hurry to him, for unless the shard of glass leaves his eye and the ice inside him melts, his heart will be cold forever." "Then there is no time to rest," said Gerda, and she and the reindeer continued on their journey. When the reindeer could go no further, he set Gerda down, and she ran through the icy wastes in her bare feet. Behind her, an army of snowflakes gathered, and they guarded her path up the dangerous mountain to the door of the Snow Queen's palace. Here they are, and the reindeer, you see, racing away to the Snow Queen's palace. Inside, everything was ice. The Snow Queen's throne was made of sharp icicles, and the floor was a frozen lake that stretched as far as Gerda could see. While the Snow Queen was there, she sat on the throne, but on this day she was travelling the world to dust snow on mountain tops. There, in the middle of the great cracked floor, was Kay. His hands and face were blue, and he was arranging sheets of ice into shapes. To his eyes, they were the most beautiful things in the world, and he did not feel the cold. Gerda ran to him and threw her arms around his neck. He sat still, unmoved by her tears. And then something wonderful happened. Gerda's teardrops fell on his chest and warmed it, and his icy heart began to thaw. Kay started crying, and his tears washed away the glass in his eye. Finally, he recognized his friend. "Gerda," he said, "where am I, and why is it so cold?" She took his hands. "You are in the palace of the Snow Queen, but we're going home now." Then she led him outside and down the mountain, and their friend the reindeer carried them back south. And as they travelled, they saw flowers throw off their snowy blankets as a glorious spring arrived. Finally, they returned to their city. In an attic room, Grandmother was waiting for them, and the roses of their rooftop garden bloomed warm and bright. And there is Kay and Gerda leaving the Snow Queen's palace. Well, I hope you like that story. It's one of my favourites, and I particularly like showing you all the pop-ups. So if you really would like to get that Snow Queen story, that's a really good one to get. But lots of stories by Hans Christian Andersen are really good stories too. So I hope you've enjoyed that, and I hope you have an absolutely wonderful Christmas, and I will see you next year. Bye for now.